know if they get a manual on how to do it or not, but I want to know they're doing it right.
Well, so do we,
And
because obviously that's the last word.
Let me look into that and call you tomorrow.
Because I really think that's important, everybody in this room, to make sure whoever they choose to do this does it right.
Who knows how?
You?
Yeah.
Mike McLean.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, I help Mike Roberts at DNRC do the annual water commissioner training class, and we've already done that. But my guess is that upon request, Mike Roberts would be happy to work with the water commissioner, provide information and give some guidelines and recommendations on how to carry it out if the commissioner hasn't done it before. And I'd be happy to help to that extent too.
Do you know if there is a written manual?
There is not. What you got in your hands is the closest it comes to a manual. What we do in the class is run through a series of PowerPoints and handouts, and what's real nice about those is the other water commissioners around the state who participate and share information. You know, we've got, and Mike has on hand some spreadsheets that you can use both in the computer and in the field to help keep records, and you go through a whole series of information. We could probably, I suspect that Mike would be willing to do that on request, you know, on a one-on-one. I don't know if you guys are gonna have one commissioner or a commissioner or multiple, but there are ways that DNRC can help with that. And I know I would be willing to also.
Okay, there is your answer. There is no manual. But his job, it looks to me, to be find the head gate, find the priority date, and if that head gate is in priority, regulate it to the amount of water that's allowed. If it's out of priority, shut it down and lock it. And
We're
if
still
they're,
fiddling with our private property right without any guidelines.
well, your private property right, sir, is subject to the state law. And if you think I'm wrong, please have your lawyer call me. Because
So we don't have a
I'm
training
still learning
program,
too
we don't
after
have
50 years.
We don't have a billing program, so this is all pretty open-ended. Okay. We can.
So how do we get an unbiased commissioner?
Well,
Well-
live up here to live down there.
Good question.
Folks have done it on other, and if you think the commissioner is being unfair about it, that's what the judge is for. That's his job. He's the referee of this. Yes, sir, in the White House.
I'm Willie Wheatle, and I represent the Rockington Ranch. And I've irrigated in the Flint Creek Valley since 1976. I pretty well know how that I irrigated the lower valley, and I irrigated up here. What we are trying to do is put the two decrees together, right? So they operate as one?
We are trying to use the water court's temporary preliminary decree. It should have incorporated both of the others. Should have included all the rights that are
I
on.
spoke to my lawyer yesterday about this, and he said until the temporary preliminary decree is completed, we are supposed to operate as the federal decree, which is the shoe decree up here, and the Featherman decree down there, on the stem of Flint Creek. And until that is completed, we don't combine the upper and the lower decrees. And that's what we were told when the water court left this valley. Now, in the future, I think you need to look very hard at putting those two decrees together, because here's what will happen. This was a dry May, a very dry May, and April. And so the lower valley mid-water rights, not the early ones, not the senior rights down there, but the mid-water rights were looking for water, and they were desperate. So they put a water commissioner on and jumped up here. Now, all of us in this decree up here were under the assumption that we were still operating as two decrees, not one, okay? Because it's a temporary preliminary decree. And so that upset a lot of people up here. Now, in the future, if you are attempting to put the two degrees together, you're gonna erase 100 years of irrigating practices that have gone on in this valley. You know, and you're gonna try and put them together, and basically what you will do over a period of years de-water the upper basin. And when you de-water the upper basin, the lower basin will no longer have irrigation in August. Because the flood irrigation that happens up here is very strong and creates that return flow. There's 1,200 inches in the chute decree up there before it even gets down to us. And we have senior rights down at the lower end of the valley here. But we don't say anything. We don't put a commissioner on because we know that if they irrigate hard up there early in the year, not only puts return flow to us, but then it puts return flow to the lower valley too. So in process of putting these 2 degrees together, you need to really talk to some of the hydrologists that have done work in this valley so that you really understand what you're doing. Because it's detrimental to what the wetlands and the fisheries that you will create over a period of years. And I'm just putting this out as information, but you know, I've irrigated here many, many years, and I know how the ditches work down there, and I know how the ditches work up here. I've been commissioner on Flint Creek water users, and so I know how the system works. I've done it since '76. Don't put them together. If you have any questions, I don't have the answers, but I've got some solutions.
Can we come see me afterwards?
Pardon me?
Can we please come see me afterwards?
Sure.
Okay. Yes.
I have very much similar experiences that just spoke. I grew up in the lower valley irrigating, and I've been up here for 30 years irrigating. And the way I understand, if the new decree, the temporary preliminary decree, is to be enforced, it is all the water in this valley. There's 4 decrees that I know of in this valley. And it covers all the water, because when Brian James came up and talked to me, he said he was going to be from Georgetown Lake Dam all the way to the lower end down close to the Clark Fort. That's what he was going to be over. Now, what I understand from you is you're saying, well, this is an exception. We won't do Lower Willow Creek, and we're going to make exceptions. Well, I don't feel that is right. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it all. Because if you put a commissioner on under a decree, it's all the water under that decree, not pick and choose. I don't think that that even makes sense, that you can say, well, we won't go up this drainage, or we won't go up that one. We're just going to do the main stem. Because Flint Creek, as any drainage, it is made up of all the tributaries that come down through there. Where I happen to be located is right underneath the reservoir up there at Flint Creek Dam. We don't have tributaries coming in. We don't have high water up there. We just have that one controlled by a valve stream. Once you get down a little farther, you start to get some tributary, and we don't see return flow. If that valve is shut down, we notice it within 2 hours. We have to work really hard to try to start to establish a return flow. And if we can do our job with the decreed water, then when it comes time to deliver East Fork of Rock Creek state water through this valley, if we have the aquifer filled up, that water will flow down through here, and the delivery is a whole lot better. If we don't get our job done, a big part of that water sinks into the ground until it fills up the aquifer to flow down through here. And just like this year, we didn't have over 400 inches till the 15th of May out of Georgetown Lake, because it didn't get full, and they just kept it shut right down. So we were very limited what we could do. And when Brian talked about coming up here and looking over all the points of diversion and measuring devices and start to get familiar with this, we talked about that some, and I said, well, you got a big job because you've got a lot of tributaries. And I just honestly don't feel it's fair to pick and choose. You're either gonna do it all, or you're gonna stay under the old decrees until this meeting is like, for me, it's like 2 years behind times. Someone should have told us, all right, in 2013, we're under the new decree. Not have a commissioner drive up and say, well, your old decrees our piece of history. We're all under the new decree. And Mike McLean, I know we went to a lot of meetings in the 80s where during this refiling, and Mike said several times, this will not happen. I doubt there's anyone in this room that'll ever see this decree enforced because it'll be so long before it's final. And we were told by the water court that we wouldn't be under it until it was finalized. And when I talked with you and I talked to Judge Dayton, both you admitted or acknowledged, especially you, that there are mistakes, there are problems in this decree. And I don't see how you can send someone out there as an arm of the court to enforce something that could be wrong, because it affects all of us. It affects our lives and our livelihood.
I hear you clear.
So what are you gonna do about it?
What are you gonna do about
I asked you first.
it? Maybe so, but this is your valley. This is not my valley, and I know it. Mike?
As Bill said, you know, when we started this adjudication process in the 80s, and he's probably right, I probably did say, well, it's gonna be a long time until we see a final decree. And it has been 33 years since I made my first trip here to help people file claims. But one of the things that happened in the interim, just for everyone's knowledge, it was before you came on board, is that we made some the legislature made some modifications to the statutes that expanded the authority of the court to identify what they call interim decrees. And the concept is to take these temporary preliminary decrees, and when water users petition to do so, to create an enforceable decree. And under this enforceable decree, you were essentially test driving what will eventually become the final decree. And you know, whether you guys want to do it or not is sort of up to the petition process of the judge, and not DNRC or Fish Wildlife Parks necessarily. But it is something to take a look at, because I know there are some issues in this decree. I know that there are some concepts of the Shoe decree and the old 40 decree that didn't get incorporated and moved forward. And until you test drive this stuff, you're not going to know what that final decree will do to you. So why wait another 20 years to find out? You know, I'm sure that the first year you use an enforceable decree, there's going to be some rough spots. And as Caitlin said, there's going to be a lot of errors to point out. But, and I'm not sure what stimulated you folks to look at it. But Bill, you're right. I didn't think we'd be here quite yet, but it has been 33 years since we talked the first time. So, you know, the world is changing and water's critical this year.
So, maybe you can cite the statute under the temporary preliminary decree view, but my understanding is that the reason that this can be operated under enforceable decree is that water distributions, issues that were before the court have been resolved. And so we're talking about new issues that we're finding during the enforcement, putting this project together, like legal land descriptions or things like that, that weren't raised through objections or issue remarks. And so maybe you can cite that statute. But that's, my understanding is that's what allows this temporary preliminary decree to be put into an enforceable decree, is that the water distribution issues have been resolved before the court. And granted, I know there's a lot more issues out there that will pop up, but maybe you could cite that. To clarify that question.
When I was a young man growing up here in the 30s, the irrigators in the upper valley had an unwritten agreement that the irrigators on the upper end of the valley would take all the water they could get as early as they could get it and get the aquifer charged, and it went that way for many, many years, and I think this is gonna upset the apple cart.
Have you talked to the commissioner about that? Yeah.
Okay, let's make a thought what might happen here, okay? You've got junior mid-level water rights in the lower valley that are dry. So they want to put a water commissioner on, they get the necessary water to do it. They come to the upper valley, and we're doing up here what I've told you we've done. We've got junior water rights irrigating like heck up there. We haven't put a commissioner on up here, how many times, Bill? Twice? Maybe twice, and since I've been irrigating, I don't even remember, but maybe one time, that was on one portion of the Shute Creek, okay? So let's think about what we're doing here. We've got mid-level, dated water rights from the lower valley that are dry. We've got a junior water rights up here in the upper valley that is irrigated. So they're gonna say, okay, let's take this 150 or this 150 inches and send it to the lower valley, okay? That's what you're supposed to do. But down here in this end of the valley are senior rights to all those down there that are trying to get that water. So where's the water gonna go? Here, okay? Before it goes down there. And in the process of doing that, you're dewatering the upper basin, which reduces the return flow for later irrigation in the year. And people need to think about that. That is so important to how this valley operates. And putting the 2 degrees together is not the way to go.
Well, you may want to ask the judge to certify the whole thing to the water court for a look at it.
Well, we've been through the hydrologist portions of this stuff for years up here when they were in the basin doing it. Pat McDonald and I went all over, and I worked with Bill, and we worked all together on this thing. It's proven. If you start taking water downstream to senior rights down there, there's gonna be nothing to do flow irrigation in the later part of the summer and fall in the lower valley. It will do the same thing as sprinkler irrigation.
I've acted out a couple more years than Bill. And I'm not arguing with Bill. I know there's a system that's been in place here forever. But it's really confusing. This spring, we were burning up. I have a right that's older, well, it's certainly older than the Georgetown right. And I couldn't, there's no water. I could wait to irrigate my alfalfa until August. Probably not gonna do much good. And so there's all these unknowns. It is complicated.
Did you try to call out Georgetown?
No.
You mentioned one time, when I visited the phone, I'm Jim Waldwick, by the way, that we were very similar to the mussel shell in
You
geographical.
didn't like it when I said that, I recall that.
But we have one element that nobody in the world else has. It's called the Georgetown Lake Homeowners Association. And if you'd have been here 10 years ago, tripping over the federal process servers, you understand what I'm talking about. So you've got to factor that into our
They
equation.
were involved in the FERC relicensing, I know that.
Well, I'm not talking about the first relicensing. I'm talking about,
Well, they wanted the lake operated in the top 24 inches so they could get their boat ramps, I remember that.
so,
They're a force.
hmm?
They're a force here,
Yes.
yeah.
And they have way more money than God.
No, they don't.
John?
Do water users understand why we're potentially operating in the water court decree? Is it under Judge Dayton's order, is it 50% of water users, 50% of flow? How did we get here?
We got here because the judge had an adequate petition to do this. He had 15% of the water users and the water and so on, and he said that's what he's gonna sign. Yes, sir.
What made it adequate?
The law says there are two things. One, if you have 15% of the water users or the water rights, the judge has the discretion to appoint a commissioner. And he had a great long petition. I didn't check it myself, but I presume the judge did. So that's what he got. And it's certainly possible to have conflicting petitions. Next spring, you may have 6 of them in there. I don't know. Yes, sir.
So is that 15% of the entire drainage or 15% of Pheasant Tree water rights?
He told me he had come to the upper basin and gotten signatures here too.
Can you name one?
Not right now, no, sir. I didn't read them, and I don't know the name.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
When I talked with you, you said that it was unclear whether it's 15% of the decreed right holders, or whether it's 15% of the people,
Or the total water.
15% of the total water,
Right.
or total land irrigated with water. So you said you told him you better have all three.
That's what I told him.
Yeah, so I guess as far as the new decree, if that takes in all the water in the basin, right? And all of it had to be refiled, every drainage. So if you would have to have 15% of the entire amount of water and people in the drainage, right?
That is partly right. The judge has the discretion to do it without the 15% if he's convinced. Now, I'm not privy to the judge's thinking.
But as far as, okay, let's say we have a commissioner put on, and he's to be paid, and so he's to be paid according to the water that he delivers? Is that how his wages figured out?
It's proportioned, ordinarily it's proportioned out among all the water users according to delivery.
So would he say, well, I deliver all the water in Flint Creek and the tributaries, because I'm under the new decree, so everyone gets a bill?
That's a question for the judge. I don't know how it's gonna be built.
Well, you
Well,
see,
no,
that's
no.
what I'm trying to say. I think you got the cart way before the
Well,
horse here.
But it's on the road, and we gotta deal with what we have.
Now,
But
wait
you're
a
not
minute, sir.
ready, it's just showing up more and more. It's still temporary and preliminary, and you're
You can lose
affecting-
those words as far as I'm concerned. It is the decree that the judge said we're going to use. And until you get that changed by another petition to court, or having certified over to us to do it right, that's where we are. I'm sorry, the words aren't.
But you're a reasonable man, I mean, don't you?
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm alarmed about it, okay?
Jeez.
I'm hearing about the aquifer up here. If I were administering this, I would be really worried about that.
Mr. McFadden, I'm going to take another step on Bill Dennis's deal here is, the question I've always had is that he mentioned all the appropriated water for the billing procedure. The water court's been in business for 33 years. Do you have a formula so we can all know exactly how this stuff's going to be prorated out? Or is it just going to be open-ended, where it's like, well, here it is, pay it, we don't know if it's right or not, but by God, here's the number.
My memory of the judge's order is that it does not deal with this. In other basins, it frequently does. What I will try to accomplish is to get that handled, so that you have some certainty in how that's going to, and I think you need to have some input on it.
Then you're the water master, you're presenting all this, and you don't even have a formula for this young man to go on? I mean, that's not even fair. It's not fair to us, and it certainly isn't fair to him.
I'm a water master with the water court, I'm not with the district court. I do not make the order on this. I will work with the judge to try to get a fair formula.
And I think that this has to be worked out, because that's part of what Bill Dennis is talking about.
I agree with
think
you.
he's right.
I agree with you. You're entitled to know what you're gonna be charged and how they got there, and to say this is wrong if you want.
Anybody knows what he needs to do?
Yeah.
You've mentioned certifying this to the water court. You have to petition the district judge
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
Do you have a procedure?
Yeah, what's the procedure?
Well, it's in the rules of civil procedure on how you certify a matter.
It's in the statute how you certify, get the district court to certify a matter to the water court. And when those come to us, they're advanced, they're supposed to be handled right away.
That was the next question, is how
Now,
long
now, in order for us to do a good job of, with a certification on this, we will have to send it over to John's people to have them examine the claims, because this was done in '84 and they weren't really examined. So what's gonna happen is no enforcement probably until that's up to the judge, but he might well stay everything. I don't know until we have the answer.
And when you certify that to the water court, what are you including?
Whatever the certification petition says. Sometimes we get certified half a mile of a stream, sometimes it's Union Creek, the whole thing over about Potomac. There were 42 water rights on that one, and they wanted to know what was gonna happen ahead of the basin coming out, so we handled that ahead of it. Yeah.
Let me ask this question, and maybe Mike can answer it, but what is the next step for the water courts as far as doing this basin? What is their next step?
My next step is
No,
going,
what's the water court's next step?
the water court meaning the district court here or me?
No, the water courts, in the state of Montana, they are the ones that came in here and got this thing going. Do they not come back?
I'm here. The water, we got a terminology problem here.
Okay.
Okay, there are 5 water courts. One is the water court in Bozeman, which is where the chief water judge sits and all the water masters. There are 4 other water courts around, 4 other judges who are authorized to handle water matters, and they're all called water courts. When I talk about it, I'm talking about the one in Bozeman. And the only jurisdiction we have is over water rights.
Right. But do they come back with representatives to finish the decree, so to say, in this basin, so we know where we stand?
Yes.
And when will they do that?
If you petition for certification, it might happen fairly soon. Otherwise, it will happen after the basin is examined by the DNRC.
So
I don't know where that is in the schedule.
notification for us water users as to when we need to be somewhere at what sets of time, so we can say yea or nay, and we object to this, or we object to that? There's gotta be something, because there's some objectionable things that are being imposed upon the upper basin
If
that
this,
need to be addressed.
if this comes out, or I won't say if, when this comes out as no longer temporary, but as a preliminary decree,
Right.
you will have objection rights.
Okay, good.
And you
That
can,
isn't-
you can
that isn't
object to.
now, right?
Hmm?
That's not now.
That's not now.
Right, okay.
But yes,
We
you will
be
have.
notified when that does happen.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
And in the interest of full disclosure, I don't know when that's gonna happen, and I haven't seen a schedule for it.
Mike, do you have an idea?
No, I think it would be a while, would be my guess, because there's basins that have not seen any adjudication. And
Well, you know, what, to elaborate a little bit on that, is it, if you guys continue to go with trying to enforce the new water court decree, and there's all kinds of errors and problems with it, the likelihood of that being certified is greater in your basin than other areas, i.e. the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this case. And so you test run this and it's a disaster. Most likely you're gonna get the next decree phase faster than get done now. You know, right now, because I work with the court of projecting when this will get done, sometime between 2015 and 2020 should be the next time. There's a 5-year window when that would happen. So it'd be a status quo, or if you go down this route and it's functional to a certain extent, I don't know. But test driving this and identifying the shortfalls would give you greater attention, I would imagine.
Well, let me bring this to your attention then, because I think you created a squeaky wheel by the lower water users getting together and getting 15% enough to put the whole basin underneath a quote-unquote single decree, when we were told by the water courts it would be administered one above and one below. So you created a squeaky wheel by doing that. And
I'm here to hear the squeaks, I'm getting them.
oh, okay, but then there is going to be a strong objection to doing that, because to take 120 or 300 inches up there in the upper end of the valley and transport it 25 miles downstream past senior rights to satisfy a mid-level right down there is an impossible call.
All right, and you know about feudal calls, right?
Well, then why are you putting the two basins of the upper and lower decree together? Because that's what you're trying to do.
But you do know about feudal calls.
That's what
If
you're
I
doing.
call, if I'm down there and I call out you're 100 inches up here, and there's no chance in hell it's ever gonna get there, the water commissioner should not honor my call.
But who makes that decision?
The water commission.
Well, he's gonna honor the guy down there that wants the water.
He doesn't have to honor the
Right,
guy
he
if
has
there's
to
no
honor
chance
that
the
guy.
water will get there.
And this guy's, you know, if we put a water commissioner on up here, we'd be getting his water too, but we don't want that to happen, because look what it does to the basin. Okay, so the water commissioner's caught in the middle. It's an unfair position for that guy to be in until you declare how you're gonna run this basin.
That's an excellent point, Will.
He's in an impossible situation, he can't do both.
But I don't run the basin.
Yeah, but maybe you better have somebody in here that knows how to run this basin.
That's what the
Before you
water,
make a call of putting the two decrees together.
that is the water commissioner's call, how to run the basin. Yes.
You have one water commissioner, according to your decree, and you have basically, listening tonight, 3 separate entities. You have the Upper Valley, the Lower Valley, and the East Fork water users.
The East Fork has its own
Willow
commissioner.
Creek 4. The East Fork and the water commissioner are the same water commissioner under your decree.
The East Fork has its own water commissioner, it's a different fellow.
Right.
They have their own water commissioner, what?
You got the same guy.
It's the same water commissioner.
No, it's not.
Up here.
Up here, down below, it's one guy. So you have 4 separate entities and 2 water commissioners. As a decreed water user, I don't think that our interests are being looked out. I think you need 2 or 3 separate water commissioners.
Can I make a statement, because I'm the water commissioner? I'll be honest with you, going and looking at everything, I'm not gonna freaking.
I think every water user in this valley ought to be made to read that return flow study that was done.
Yeah, let Brian
by
come up.
DNRC.
I know it puts me in a bad position, I tried, and I don't want you guys upset with me out of the deal.
He's the water commissioner. Why don't you have you come in here and be able to talk? Talking, I'm trying to talk right now.
Brian, come on up.
Why don't just control me? Ask Brian to come on up. He's the one.
Brian,
I'm right here.
are you willing to come up?
I'll come up.
Okay. Go sit down, you don't have to stand up here.
Does anybody have any questions? I'll try to do the job the best I can, and I agree with Bill. I am stuck in the middle. I don't want to frickin' cause a big problem. I know you have a separate system up here. I know how return flow works, guys. I've run other systems before. I've run Willow Creek for a lot of years down there, and it's a lot like the same. Upper part of Willow Creek, if I don't get them going, lower part of Willow Creek, it's the same thing. I understand. There's issues gonna come up, and all I'm asking you is just show me what your system is. I'm not here to go just send the water down the creek. If you wanna know the truth, one guy made a comment to me the other day. Basically, when the water gets down to the lower part of Flint Creek, I don't like seeing a whole lot there. That means guys aren't using it. I mean, truthfully, I'm here to try to protect your water, not take it away. There's a lot of other issues out there, guys, too. You got that Indian patch. One thing that you will have is records of all the use of the water you're using. I'll try to do the best job I can. Shoot, Bill.
I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, when you came and talked to me and you said you were under the new decree, the 76 GJ decree, do you feel that you need to commission all the water in the drainage?
All we're gonna do is look at it, Bill, and we're gonna have records, so you're gonna have usage. What it boils down to is if you guys run it a little different up here, I mean, every system's different. I'll be honest with you, from running different systems. I'm not here to come and crash and burn anybody's system. It needs to be looked at from my standpoint. I've never seen it before. I wanna look at and see what you guys are doing. I understand irrigating and return flow. I mean, the one thing is up here, I mean, if we get in a real dry summer, answer me this question up here. How many of you guys would be short in your upper part and may want water? I'm not saying that you guys don't do it that way, But water rights in Montana are first in time, first in right. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Everybody's is that way. That's why it was filed years ago.
But my question really is, okay, there's 4 decrees in the valley.
Yep.
And I think the reason there's 4 decrees is there's kind of like 4 obvious different irrigation systems within the system.
Correct. There is.
And the people that have survived there have learned how to use their system and understand
Correct.
it. So if there is a 15% of whatever, or the judge, it sounds like it doesn't really matter, because the judge has his discrepancy if there's only 5% and he feels it's right, so the 15% really isn't even relevant, it doesn't sound like. But you go down to this valley and you see a tributary coming in, but you're like, well, the judge said I'm not gonna look at that tributary.
I agree exactly what you're saying, Bill. It needs to be the whole thing. The only reason at this point in time that, and I'm the one on Willow Creek already, there was already paperwork filed. I mean, it can be thrown in the mix of it without an issue. I'm already appointed on it. It's not a big deal. Willow Creek just has a stored water deal behind it is all, and it'll just have to be a different way to bill out for the stored water versus billing out for decreed water. That's the only difference.
One other thing before you get out of here, one thing that really worries me
Okay.
is what if we don't have Brian James? What if we have someone appointed from the water court in Bozeman or someone like that comes in here and says, okay, the judge put me on as commissioner this year, and he isn't willing to understand this system.